Hi and welcome to the next lesson in the Crime and Deviance module. Today's lesson is titled Factors Affecting Criminal Behaviour, Biological and Psychological Explanations. So by the end of this lesson we're going to be able to identify and explain biological and psychological explanations of criminal behaviour. And finally we're going to be able to evaluate these explanations of criminal behaviour, so looking at the strengths and the weaknesses of both explanations. And as a starter activity, I just want you to maybe write down on a piece of paper in front of you, do you think people are born as criminals, or do you think they're made into criminals? So I'd just like you to write down your ideas that you have for this question on a piece of paper in front of you, and I'd like you to keep this piece of paper in front of you as we go throughout the lesson. You're going to be revisiting it in a few slides' time. So just pause me as you do this. Okay, great. So hopefully you've managed to write down some ideas for that question. So let's move on. Okay, so I'm going to present to you some statements, and ordinarily in the classroom I'd ask you to stand up if these statements apply to you. But instead I'm just going to ask you to do a tally on your piece of paper. So for each statement I reveal, you can do maybe one line on your tally if the statement applies to you. And obviously if it doesn't apply to you, just leave it blank. So the first statement is, do you have any extra fingers or thumbs? The second statement is, do you have curly hair? And the final statement is, do you have black skin? And according to sociologists called Lombroso, all of you standing up, or all of you who have a total of 3 tallies, have genetic makeup to become a criminal. And we're going to explore this theory in a bit more detail. So Lombroso comes up with a biological explanation as to why people commit crime, and he introduced a theory which claimed that people are actually born criminals, so they have a genetic makeup which makes them likely to commit criminal acts. And in order to produce this theory, he studied a group of nearly 4,000 criminals in a prison. And he concluded from this that criminals can be identified by their physical features. And these physical features are as follows. So large jaws, joint eyebrows, so monobrow, curly hair, darker skin, extra thumbs or fingers, an extra nipple, and high cheekbones. So this is perhaps quite entertaining, this theory, as I don't think I've actually met anyone who has extra thin fingers or thumbs or an extra nipple. But according to Lombroso, these do exist, and if you have the following of these features, then you're more likely to commit criminal acts. So I'm going to encourage you now to maybe be a bit more critical and think about whether you can identify any problems with Lombroso's research. So just pause me as you write in this box here, which you also have on your PowerPoint screen, what you think the main problems might be with Lombroso's research. Okay, great. So you might have identified that there is an issue here with Lombroso's sample. He studied individuals who were only in prisons. Obviously, there are criminals that have not been caught and who live outside of the criminal justice system, live outside of prisons, and therefore his study cannot be entirely representative of all criminals. He also only focused on a group of 4,000 criminals. When we think about all the criminals that we have in society, there are obviously a lot more. You could also argue that his findings were quite racist, the fact that he alluded to the idea that it is individuals of darker skin who are more likely to be criminal. This is perhaps based on stereotypical assumptions that you could argue were riddled with bias that were influencing his findings. Okay, so many sociologists reject Lombroso's theory of criminal behaviour. And I would like you to answer the question, which is in the box here, which says reasons why sociologists reject Lombroso's biological explanation of criminal behaviour. And in order to fill out this box, I would like you to read the case study of a man called Tony Mobley below and identify reasons why you think sociologists disagree with Lombroso's biological explanation. And I'd like you to write all the reasons here in the box below. So just pause me as you read the extract here about Tony Mobley, and then please, once you've read that, fill out the box below. Okay, great. So hopefully you've had a chance to read the extract and fill out the box. And some key things I picked out from here were that although Mobley did commit a criminal act, research into his family history revealed that he had 4 generations of family members that had been responsible for a range of violent crimes, including murder and rape. So this here sort of provides evidence which goes against Lombroso's view that we're born criminal, because it suggests here that maybe Tony Mobley had learnt his criminal behaviour through what he had grown up around. And we call this in sociology socialization. So sociologists would reject these biological explanations and would argue that actually issues of socialization can have a huge impact on the sort of criminal behaviour that individuals might then engage in life. If you've been socialised into accepting these sort of criminal norms and values, such as rape and murder, then obviously you're going to be infinitely more likely to commit these acts as you go on in life. So this sort of provides evidence, concrete evidence, against Lombroso's study. And then we move on to the psychological explanation for criminal behaviour, and this is by someone called John Bowlby. And he talks about maternal deprivation, and this isn't to get confused with material deprivation. This is maternal deprivation, so deprivation or neglect from the mother's behalf onto the child. So Bowlby found that the relationship between a child and mother in the first 5 years of life was most crucial to aspects of socialisation. He says that if there was a prolonged separation from the mother or deprivation in the mother's care, then there was an increased instance of delinquency, emotional problems and antisocial behaviour. And to inform his study, Bowlby studied 44 teenage thieves and found that more than half of these thieves had been separated from their mothers for longer than 6 months during their first 5 years of life. So here we have Bowlby, who is saying that actually it's not so much to do with the genetic makeup of a child, but more to do with what we have previously just discussed in the Tony Mobley case, that actually issues to do with socialisation are imperative here. And the question at the bottom of the screen is asking you how you would criticise Bowlby's study. So just take a moment and study this extractive writing again, and then think about how you would, as a sociologist, criticise this. Okay, great. So hopefully you've managed to draw on the fact that there is a significant issue of representativeness here, seeing as Bowlby only used 44 teenagers as his sample. And we obviously know there are a lot more teenage thieves in society, so the fact that he studies such a small minority of them doesn't really enable us to fully understand that actually, yes, that is a reason why individuals commit criminal acts due to maternal deprivation, because there may be many more criminals out there who actually did not experience maternal deprivation in their lives and therefore cannot be used to explain this. So that's a way in which we would criticise Bowlby's study. And here, guys, is a task that I would like you to take part in as a means of thinking like a sociologist. And you've got 2 case studies here of 2 children. And I'd like you to carefully read these case studies and identify which child you think is most likely to enter a life of crime. To do this, you must explain your ideas in full using the evidence from the case studies. And you can answer the questions to this on the next slide. Just here, so you can write your answer out in full, producing an argument as to what child you think is most likely to enter a life of crime, using concrete evidence from the case studies to inform your answer, and where appropriate, maybe referring to Bowlby's study. Okay, now in your exams, a really useful skill to have is to refer to actual instances of criminal activity or criminal behaviour that you could use to inform your answers. And you may or may not remember a man called Joseph Fritzl. This is a picture of him here. And he's a great example which you could use to provide evidence or a supporting argument for John Bowlby's study of maternal deprivation. So Joseph Fritzl abducted his daughter and fathered 7 children with her. and during his trial, it was discovered that he too was actually abused as a young child. He grew up in a single-parent family with just his mother. But it was found that his mother lacked affection towards him and would beat him. I think there was moments where he was significantly malnourished, deprived of food, and this kind of thing. So he definitely experienced maternal deprivation. So as a question I'd like you to answer, and you can just answer it in the pink box here. How does this provide evidence of Bowlby's study? How could you, in an exam, use the Joseph Fritzl case to support your the arguments that Bowlby provides of maternal deprivation? So just pause me as you fill out this pink box. Okay, great. Let's move on. So many sociologists argue that issues of inadequate socialization are actually a root cause of crime. And so they reject the biological explanation. They don't so much agree with Lombroso that we have genetic makeup that creates a likelihood for us to commit crime, but rather they turn to issues of socialization or inadequate socialization to explain how to explain reasons why individuals are more likely to commit crime. So how does Bowlby's views support this argument? So you could write a sentence or two here to just explain to me how we can use John Bowlby's argument to support sociological explanations that actually inadequate socialization exists as a main cause of crime. So if you could just pause me as you write maybe a few sentences to provide an argument for this question, and just resume me when you're done. Right, let's move on. So now I'm going to ask you to revisit the mind map that you did at the beginning of the lesson. So the question was, are criminals born as criminals or are they made into criminals? So add to what you wrote at the beginning of the lesson in a different coloured pen, or maybe just in a different coloured font. I want to see whether or not your arguments have changed here. Maybe you wrote something at the beginning of the lesson and your thoughts and beliefs on this have now changed as a result of what we've explored during the course of this lesson. I think it'd be really interesting to compare the thoughts we had at the beginning of the lesson to what we have now. So please complete this task now by pausing me. I'm really interested to see how your thoughts have potentially changed during the course of this. Okay, and now we're on to the last task, which is a practice exam question. And it simply says, outline what maternal deprivation is and how it can lead to a higher instance of criminal behaviour. And what is the structure for a 3-marker, you might be asking? I have put it here for you in yellow. So it's point, evidence, explain. It's not a 4-marker, so there's no L at the end of this. You aren't expected to link it back to the question. You just have to simply do P-E-E. So you might want to start your answer with stating maternal deprivation is, and this can lead to a higher instance of crime because, and then give me an explanation and an example. Well done for your engagement in this, guys. I hope you found it useful. Please submit the completed PowerPoint to show my homework for me to mark when you are done. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.